I'm about to put this 220-pound sandbag on my shoulder and carry it around a 400-meter track. But at first, I need to get it on the track, so I'm going to bear hug carry it to the other side because that's where I want to start and consider that a warm-up for the central nervous system. I dropped the bag halfway there. Then I picked it back up and carried it the rest of the way. I didn't want to tax myself too much before it really got going. Before picking the sandbag up, I did a little light active stretch type warm-up with the band and a few swings and snatches with a kettlebell. I found that and box jumps are a great way to warm up the nervous system for heavy sandbag stuff. After that, it's on to the shock of the heavy sandbag. I don't think I really get going with that until the third set in, especially in the early morning sessions. In this video, I've got all the shoulder carrying on camera with a little extra at the end. This is like a max out day at the end of 8 weeks of overloading sandbag, bear hug, and shoulder carries, plus a week break of just doing calisthenics when my body said we're not doing it this week. Everything I did training-wise in this entire cycle is on my channel. If you're new and you'd like to check it out, it's got all the details about weight, volume, and approach in it. So this sandbag I'm using is very underfilled and floppy. I have a lot of old clothes inside the bag in an attempt to keep it somewhat solid. Every time I fill it initially, all the weight's at the bottom, but after throwing it around and dropping it a few times, the weight will even out. To me, with shoulder carries, it's not really the weight that makes these hard, it's how floppy and how massive the bag is. Keeping it controlled and in the right spot for the longest. I don't have a lot of room on my narrow-framed shoulders to seat it just right. So whichever side it's on, the arm doesn't get a break, and after a while, the burn gets pretty real. When it was on the left side, the longer the carry, the more I used my right arm to help hold the weight in place. The entire time during these carries, not only was it a fight to stay upright and not fall over, but I had a lot of weight shifted to the back with a slight lean forward, almost trying to make it loaded like a back squat, but I'm not sure if that's possible with this bulky bag. Throughout the entire distance, I dropped the bag 5 times and shouldered it 6 total times. So I wanted to clarify something, make a big correction here. This is a 400-meter, quarter-mile track on the inside lane. I did the carry more to the outside, but didn't seem to stay in the same lane. In all the videos I made talking about this leading up to it, my dumbass kept saying it was 200 meters. Now I apologize for that. I'm not sure why. I guess that number was stuck in my head for some reason. Anyways, this is the only place I have access to with a known distance. During this cycle, I never used distance as a metric since I do not have a designated training spot where I can measure and set distances. I just focus on weight and how many times I could carry it for a decent, rough, short distance in a 40-minute time frame. With having done it like this, I actually surprised myself with how far I shoulder carried this bag on some of these. Approaching with short distance carries during regular training seems to be beneficial for work capacity and being able to carry farther and longer. That's just what I've gathered from my own experiments. So there were a couple things that sparked my interest with shoulder carrying a sandbag. The first one was doing a ruck event before I got on here with a bunch of people a couple years ago, carrying 80 to 120 pound sandbags, one-sided farmer carries with a 6-gallon water jugs around the entire city of Tampa, Florida with a rucksack on. Total of 40 miles in about 29 hours. Wondering why it was so hard and wanting to make it easier, and then seeing this guy from Switzerland that was there carrying the 120-pound sandbag the longest and farthest, like it was nothing. The second was the story of Milo in ancient Greece that strength trained by carrying a calf until it was a full-grown bull that inspired this cycle. I found it's harder to film something like this because I'm walking away and moving farther from the camera constantly. So when I was filming it, after I dropped the bag each time, I had to walk back to get the camera, and I can say that was a very good way to pace myself and get some good rest, because otherwise I would have not rested and burned myself out pretty quick. I'm sure you've noticed by now, but there were people running and walking in a lot of these shots. I was really just trying to stay out of anyone's way and do what I needed to do. And that's why I got closer to the outside of the track. In reality, I imagine I look pretty taboo out here, shoulder carrying a sandbag. But I don't care about that. When I do something like this, I get locked in on what I'm doing, and I don't care about anything external. At the entrance, there's a sign with the rules on it that says stuff like no skateboards, no metal spikes on the track, yada, yada, yada. It didn't say no sandbags, though, so I guess there was no reason they could kick me off the track. So this is the final stretch of the carry. I started the lap on my left shoulder and ended it on my right. I tried to even the carries out on both sides the best I could. I was able to carry farther on the left side for some reason, possibly because I'm right-handed, and it was easier to use my right arm to help support the bag on my left shoulder as well. Towards the end, I almost started running with the sandbag. As you can see, I was ready to get this done. It was a whole lot of suck, but definitely worth it. Something I've never done before, and I see things like this as an opportunity to learn about yourself and see what you're capable of. We as humans are capable of a ton, and it's a shame many people go through life without ever realizing that. As you can see here, I went into some single arm overhead kettlebell carries. I go into front rack carries after that as well. I'm pushing the distance with these 100 plus yards, football field length, carrying down with one arm and then carrying back with the other. Throughout the regular training in the cycle, I paired these with the sandbag carries, overall keeping consistent volume without burning myself out. Since this is the end of the cycle, I burned these out, and I think they burned worse than the sandbag carries, just because only a small part of my body is taking the beating over that distance, instead of the entire body from the sandbag. I also doubled the speed of these clips too, because it took a bit of time, and you see me disappear and then reappear on the way back. So now that the cycle is finished, I'm taking a break from carrying heavy sandbags for a little bit. My plans are carried out, I guess. Now it's time to start focusing more on lifting the sandbag. All these carries have built a ton of work capacity and muscle density, which means they've adapted to become more efficient in lifting heavier for longer. And that's what I'm going to need in this next cycle, because it's going to get heavy. And the short-term goal here is to shoulder 300 pounds. Then the long-term goal is to be able to handle lifting 300 pounds with all lifts for volume. Body weight-wise, I stay between 193 to 196 pounds. Diet's always on point with what works for me, and doing the best with what I have. It's whole foods only for me, nothing ultra-processed. I don't take any supplements. I'm just out here supporting a family of 4 on predominantly one income, with 2 in diapers right now, in this constantly inflating American economy, where the wages don't really seem to keep up with inflation too much. Supplements haven't ever been in the budget, and my fitness pursuits aren't really the top priority either in the grand scheme of things. So I've just figured it out in an overwhelming ocean of contradicting advice from the experts with pieces of paper on the internet. I've learned that the body always figures out how to adapt and add muscle, even if it's forced to, especially being in a caloric deficit and less than so-called optimal conditions regarding meal timing and sleep. So here I am, getting the sandbag off the track and out of the stadium via bear hug carry. This is how far I had to bring it in, and now I'm bringing it out to finish off this carry pursuit and experiment. I'll come back to carries like this at some point with a new approach and weight layout. Since going heavier on shoulder carries kicked me in the teeth towards the end of the cycle, I would reapproach those with something decently heavy for distance. I'll say personally, I prefer shoulder carries over bear hug just because it's a little less terrible. I can't say one is better than the other though, because they both hit different. Well, that's all I have for this one. If you have anything to add, any questions, leave it in the comments. Thanks for being here. I'll catch y'all in the next one.